if you want to help change the world, eat a nutrient-dense carrot. This is the theme of our webinar. And during our time together over the next 60 minutes, you'll be hearing from 4 speakers. That's Matthew Adams, David Ebsworth, Mukti Mitchell, and myself, Elizabeth Westaway. So we're each describing a different piece of the jigsaw involving the important linkages between soil health, plant health, animal health, food quality, citizen and planetary health, and having a carbon savvy lifestyle. The presentations will be followed by Q&A. And as I say, please mute your microphones, switch on your videos, and we hope you enjoy your journey into learning more about the multiple benefits of nutrient-dense food. I am the first speaker, and I'll give a brief self-introduction. My name is Elizabeth Westaway. I'm co-founder and director of Growing Real Food for Nutrition, CIC, which we refer to as Grffn. It's a newly registered award-winning social enterprise promoting how to grow and measure nutrient-dense food. And my presentation is entitled Nutrient-Dense Food, a Regenerative Solution for People and Planet. So the world is experiencing several concurrent emergencies, particularly climate change and biodiversity loss, as well as the often overlooked health emergency. Now, this diagram on the right illustrates the pivotal contribution of biodiversity towards good health and well-being of people and planet, of One Health. However, the worsening biodiversity loss stemming from human separation from nature has resulted in food systems that are not working for people or planet, where people are fed by the food industry, which pays no attention to health, and are treated by the health industry, which pays no attention to food. Now, as a public health nutrition specialist, I'm particularly concerned with a health emergency, worsening levels of malnutrition in all its forms, and the syndemic of diet-related non-communicable diseases, such as type 2 diabetes, heart disease, stroke, and certain types of cancers, which are disproportionately impacting disadvantaged individuals, their families, communities, and the healthcare systems that serve them, such as the NHS in the UK. Now, to put this into perspective, here are some recent World Health Organization statistics on one diet-related non-communicable disease. That's diabetes. And diabetes is now one of the world's most common long-term conditions. So I'll just run through some of these stats. The number of people with diabetes rose to 422 million in 2014. The prevalence has risen more rapidly in low and middle income countries compared with high income countries. Diabetes is a major cause of blindness, kidney failure, heart attack, stroke, and lower limb amputations. Between 2000 to 2016, there was a 5% increase in premature mortality from diabetes. And in 2019, an estimated 1.5 million deaths were directly caused by diabetes. Now, in terms of diabetes statistics for the UK, where we are based, more than 4.9 million people have diabetes, and if nothing changes, 5.5 million will have diabetes by 2030. More than 700 people with diabetes die prematurely every week. The NHS, our healthcare system, spends at least £10 billion a year on diabetes, which is about 10% of the entire budget. Around 90% of people with diabetes have type 2 diabetes. And this is previously considered a disease with adult onset. However, more children are being diagnosed with it. And another statistic, 850,000 people are currently living with type 2 diabetes, but they aren't yet diagnosed. They don't realise they have got it or are at risk of it. And research shows that for some people, combined lifestyle interventions, including diet, physical activity, and sustained weight loss, can be effective in reducing the risk of type 2 diabetes by about 50%. So the importance of diet now for sustainable development was underscored by Gro Harlem Brundtland over 20 years ago in her quote here: "A safe and nutritionally adequate diet is a basic individual right and an essential condition for sustainable development, especially in developing countries." In 2010, the FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, developed the concept of sustainable diets. So sustainable diets are protective and respectful of biodiversity and ecosystems, culturally accessible, economically fair and affordable, nutritionally adequate, safe and healthy, while optimizing natural and human resources. Hence, FAO defined sustainable diets as diets with low environmental impacts which contribute to food and nutrition security and to healthy life for present and future generations, thereby also respecting planetary boundaries. Now, our food choices can make a difference to people and planet. Hence, it's important to be aware of and ideally follow the principles of a healthy, balanced, diverse and sustainable diet. So what are they? Well, firstly, choose sustainable food. Get to know where your food comes from and consider local and seasonal foods. Eat more plants and animals. So eat a higher proportion of plant-based foods relative to animal source foods. Eat healthy and minimally processed foods. That's look for fresh ingredients where possible. Ensure balance and variety, as too much of any one food won't be good for you or the planet. And eat different food groups and different foods within these groups. Also, check your national dietary guidelines and find sustainable options that fit the health guidance. Now, in the UK, the National Food-Based Dietary Guideline is the Eat Well Guide, and this was most recently revised in 2016. So if the guidance is to eat more plants, I would like to focus in on fruit and vegetables as a food group and highlight their benefits. So it's well known that fruit and vegetables are a rich source of vitamins and minerals and phytonutrients, including antioxidants and polyphenols. Different coloured fruit and vegetables contain different phytonutrients, and phytonutrients can protect tissues and cells from inflammation by helping to regulate immune function. So there is an increasing body of research that suggests that chronic inflammation can be a major contributor to the development of chronic diseases, such as type 2 diabetes. Therefore, the food we eat needs to be as nutrient dense as possible with high levels of phytonutrients. Now, if we consider food as medicine, here are some recent research findings on how fruit and vegetable consumption can impact type 2 diabetes, as an example of a chronic condition, and diet-related non-communicable disease. A 2020 study by Zheng et al. Published in the BMJ, which included over 23,000 people, reported that diets high in fruit and vegetables may help to reduce the risk of developing type 2 diabetes by 50%. And the study concluded that consumption of even a moderately increased amount of fruit and vegetables could help to prevent the condition. Another 2020 study by Halverson et al. States that it may be important to emphasize specific subgroups of fruit and vegetables, such as apples, blueberries, grapefruit, to reduce the risk of type 2 diabetes. Now, in developing the concept of food as medicine, interest in fresh food prescription programs, or FFPPs, has been increasing. And in Canada, Heasley et al.'s 2021 study concluded that FFPPs may be a useful model for healthcare providers to improve patients' food environments, healthy food consumption, and food security. In the UK, GPs could soon be asked to prescribe fruit and vegetables, as well as food-related education and social support under plans set up in the 2021 National Food Strategy proposals. So just think of the increased positive health outcomes if all fruit and vegetables are nutrient dense, packed full of phytonutrients. Now, this sentiment on food as medicine is shared by Charles Massey. I really like this quote. If people ate truly nutrient-rich food out of healthy soil, you would slash the national health bill straight away. So to finish, in recognising the linkages between soil health, food quality, and the health of people and planet, Grffn, that's Growing Real Food for Nutrition, is promoting nutrient-dense food and short, local, nutrient-dense food supply chains as a regenerative solution to the different global emergencies for improved population health and by way of helping to achieve sustainable development goals, particularly as the benefits to people and planet of improving nutrition multiplies out across all SDGs. So thank you very much. And my next up is my colleague, Matthew Adams.
Right, thank you, Elizabeth. That was excellent. I need to just sort my screen out. Right, I'm off mute, I believe. Okay, so I'm going to talk about measuring nutrient-dense food and its relationship to soil, plant, human, and planetary health. So this picture on the right is our symbol of there are many different ways to grow a plant. And this is connected really to our worldview. And I just wanted to touch briefly on the concept of worldview. Don't want to go in too much detail, but it's fundamentally important about how we understand the world to work. So we're currently sort of dominated by a worldview that's disconnected from nature, and that is apparent to many of the problems that we face today. And where we want to get to is the picture on the right of a connected worldview where we integrate with nature. Now, this is how I would sum up the environmental impact associated with that disconnected worldview, where humans come first and nature second. So without statistics, we're all aware that the biodiversity is declining, climate is declining, soil health is declining, malnutrition is increasing, degenerative diseases are increasing, and even the number of viruses are increasing. Never or nowhere is there, there's a very poor understanding of what food quality is. And I've put that at the bottom. I'm going to move on to explore what is food quality. So basically, in the UK, it's ignored. I go to the Food Standards Authority, and if you interrogate their database, their website, and put in food quality, nothing comes up. They're only concerned with food safety. And you could argue that food safety is an issue of food quality. And you go to Europe and they're a little bit confused. This statement comes from an EU paper. The notion of food quality rests on a complex and multidimensional concept influenced by a wide range of situational and contextual factors. That to me is a very clever bit of wording that suggests it's not an easy thing to define. Now, the United Nations and the Food and Agricultural Organization have been working on trying to understand and define food quality, and they're getting a little bit closer. So it rests on the expected properties such as organoleptic, which is taste, aroma, qualities like that, and nutritional characteristics or resulting benefits. But still, they haven't managed to define what it is. And then finally, organically certified food. There have been multiple studies carried out looking at the difference between conventionally grown and organically certified food. And many of these studies highlight that there are differences. However, it's very difficult to bring about the evidence that all organically certified food is of a higher nutritional quality. So because of that, the Food Standards Authority, and more importantly, perhaps the Advertising Standards Authority, will not accept these claims. So I have been developing my own, well, this is my working definition of what food quality is. It's an indicator of a well-grown plant that expresses the concept of total health. And as I go through this presentation, I hopefully I can explain what I mean by total health. And the great thing is we're learning how to measure this using simple handheld tools. So I'm starting now with the concept of nutrient density as measured by a Brix refractometer, which is a simple tool which measures the total dissolved solids in a plant. Now, Dr. Carey Reams, an American agronomist in the early to mid 1900s, he ran a large laboratory and advised farmers on how to grow food. And he observed, in a lifetime of observing chemical analysis and also observing plants in the field, he worked out that there was a strong correlation between the sugar levels and associated vitamins and soluble minerals in the juice of plants. And he created what's called the Brix tables as a suggestion of food quality. And he created the 4 categories: poor, average, good, and excellent. And for a list of fruits and vegetables and a few grasses, he created Brix values for those 4 categories. Now, he suggested that when you reach the excellent category, you will see these 4 metrics. You will see a plant that's completely resistant to pests and diseases. It will have increased yield of more uniform growth. It will taste better, and it will have a longer shelf life. So that table was first introduced in the 1970s, and it's now done its rounds. Many people have tried out this method, and there's a growing interest that actually this is a crude but effective measure of food quality. So what's going on? Back to my symbol here, just to explain. A plant, it photosynthesizes, and the product of photosynthesis is carbohydrate. So it's largely it's sugar. Now, those sugars, up to 50%, are given up by the plant and pushed back down through the roots to feed microbes. So this is microbial food. So the plant is sharing the carbohydrate with microbes, and microbes need to be present in the soil for the collection and increased collection of mineral elements. So iron, selenium, phosphorus, mineral elements that are found in the soil are consumed, a large percentage of them are consumed by bacteria and fungi and passed on to the plant. So the plant here is working in symbiosis. And when both the microbes are present in diversity and numbers, and also when the mineral elements are in the soil, the plant continues to grow unhindered. Now, John Kemp tells us that a plant typically photosynthesizes around 15% efficiency. When microbes and minerals in the correct balance and diversity are present in the soil, a plant can increase this efficiency by 3 or 4 times that. And that gives you an indication of the rising or increasing Brix scale. Now, this is a clip of what I'm talking about, measuring Brix using a refractometer. So following the Oxford Real Farming Conference in 2020, I was invited to go onto the Radio 4 Today programme and demonstrate the Brix refractometer. So this was a Twitter clip that was videoed and later released. It shows you what the Brix refractometer is, and how it's used. And so I'll run the clip for you.
What we're going to do, these two carrots, which are different, Simon and I are going to test them.
Yes.
So we've labelled.
Not all carrots are the same.
They're not the same, no. Let's forget the labels. Let's look at what the nutritional value is.
Okay, so I've tasted sample one.
So sample one. So I could very quickly test that. At the moment, the tester that I have to cut a slice of carrot, and then I crush it in my pliers, and I put just a few drops of liquid onto the handheld refractometer, close the lid, and there we go. Within about a minute, I'm now taking a reading, and this reading is, I've got a score of 6.
I like sample 2 better. It tastes better to me.
Simon, okay, let's go with that. Sample 2 scored a 9, and sample 1 scored a 6.
Is an organic carrot always more nutritious?
There's no guarantee, I'm afraid.
Really?
Could you ever see this at a point of sale? Would I be able to test the carrots in the shop?
Yes, that's what we'd like to move towards. So the evolution of the Brix testing, which is quite basic and crude, is that we're developing a scanner. It's called the bionutrient meter. It's been developed in America, and we'd love to bring it to the UK to contribute to the research. It's an open source project. So it's a project that's in development, and we'll be asking people to get involved with either doing the Brix testing, or the next stage is with the bionutrient meter to be sending us samples so we can find out exactly what's in the food, match that to the scan, and then people can scan the quality.
So that is the theory of measuring nutrient-dense plants. And Grffn are now involved or want to build the evidence to support these claims. And so we've a number of projects that we're developing for that. But I'm going to run through some of the building the evidence. So first of all, what are we measuring with the Brix refractometer? So it's the products of photosynthesis. I've already mentioned the production of carbohydrate. So that is the basic output of photosynthesis. Then what happens is through enzymatic reactions, those sugars are transformed into more complex sugars. They're also transformed into all the nutrients that a plant requires, but also there are many nutrients that animals and humans require as well. So these are all derived from the base product of photosynthesis. On the left, bottom left, you can see how to interpret the Brix scale. So when you look through the Brix refractometer, it's like looking through a telescope, and you will see the scale 0 to 32. So a low value is in the poor food quality category, and a higher value, the higher number, will be in towards the excellent. Now, the absence of pests and disease is quite a claim, but Dr. Thomas de Kestra, he's been working a lifetime of research looking at the relationship between plant health and Brix. Now, he's an entomologist. His speciality is obviously insects, and in a recent podcast, he was able to show us his latest work. And what we're looking at here, the picture on the right hand side, is a Brix scale of 1 to 20, and on the bottom right hand side are the groups of insects that attack plants. And he's determined that when you reach a Brix of 6 to 8, then the aphid group will no longer start eating that plant, through to the point of a Brix of between 10 and 12. And then you move into this magic spot of a plant being totally healthy, where no insects, no disease attacks that plant. Now, interestingly, you see the GMO arrow there. He has never found a GMO plant to have a leaf Brix of more than 10. Therefore, what he's saying is all GMO plants are not healthy. And in order to fix that, it costs a lot of money. And of course, then you're into spraying insecticides and fungicides and herbicides to try and control the situation, which further depletes the microbes in the soil, which further depletes the health of the plant. This was an example of a project that Grffn carried out. So we grew the same seed potatoes in 2 different soils. And here we've got a difference in the quality, which you can visually see. And we had a very low Brix in this sample, sample A of 4.5. And in sample B, the higher Brix value of 6.5. So this is correlating the higher Brix to less pest and disease. Remember, when we reach excellent, we would expect to not see any pest and disease. And the next one is taste. So we've carried out taste testing sessions. One of the claims for better, higher quality, more nutrient dense food is that it tastes better. So doing a blind taste testing session, we had 35 people vote for the higher Brix value. And 21, interestingly, voted for the poor Brix value. Now, if you remember that picture that I just showed, what people were selecting were they preferred the taste of the potatoes, where you could see there was a lot more disease and issues with the quality of the potatoes. No time to go into this, but it's interesting how our taste receptors may be tuned to low quality. Using Brix to assess food quality. I was recently commissioned by the Welsh Parliament to do a food quality testing report in Cardiff. So I looked at a farmer's market, Paul's Organic Veg, a wholesaler, Wellfield Road, Waitrose, Lidl and Tesco, and I bought the same vegetables and fruit types, and I Brix tested them. And this is how it worked out, with Paul's Organic Veg at the top, Wellfield Road, Waitrose, Lidl, Tesco in that order. However, if you look at the value on the right-hand side in blue, remember this is poor, average, good and excellent. So whilst Paul's Organic Veg scored into the good category, there's still room for improvement. And the same with the cherry tomatoes, there was still room for improvement. When it came to salad tomatoes, they were all in the poor category. Now, this topic was introduced in a free debate by Jenny Rathbone in the Senate just last month, 22nd September. And so what we're hoping is that this will spark a wider debate. Moving into the evolution of the Brix, we talked about it in the video, is the development of a bionutrient meter. This is happening in America, and we've connected with the developers over there, and it's part of an open source citizen science project. And we want to bring this research to the UK. One of the findings from their original 2018 proof of concept report was they found 200 times more antioxidants and polyphenols in the best carrot and 14 times more iron in the best spinach. These are significant variations in nutrients. And they also found that regenerative practices were above the median for antioxidant and polyphenols. Regenerative practices are all about working with the health of the soil to improve that health and to bring the biology back. Now, this is a related piece of work to the bionutrient meter, where they're now using it to measure soil parameters. And they were looking at, is there a relationship between soil and the nutrient density? And what they were finding was that the higher levels of antioxidant and polyphenols were relating to increased carbon in the soil. So when you consider that by measuring food quality, you could also potentially be measuring the amount of carbon being cycled in healthy soils. Moving on, so I touched earlier on about some of the issues with organically certified food not being accepted by Food Standards Agency. And I think this is potentially because the organic certification label, it it monitors the process, not the product. So measuring the food that we actually eat is going to be a far better way to guarantee quality. Now, this is the end. So evolving a connected worldview, which is our picture on the right, if we begin to think about bringing food quality standards to the top of the list, and if we understand and can measure higher food quality, that will help to build healthy soil, which requires us to increase biodiversity, which repairs the climate. And in return for helping nature, nature helps us. So with better, stronger, healthy plants, we can improve our immune systems, we can reduce malnutrition, and we could potentially see reductions in degenerative diseases. And that's my end of slide. Thank you. So David, I think it's over to you. David, it's over to you. Can you unmute and do your presentation?
Hi guys, sorry about that. I'm just, I'm technical lead and I'm having slight internet issues, so apologies. 1 second. Cool. Right, I'm going to stop share and hand over to you, Mitzi. Sorry, mate.
No problem. Okay, so I'm Mitzi Mitchell. I'm from Carbon Savy, and I'm a great admirer and supporter of Grffn and the important work they've been doing. I've been developing a low carbon lifestyle for more than 25 years, and a few things I've done in that time is write 5 online carbon footprint calculators, including one of the top 3 ones for the Farm Carbon Toolkit, which is one of the top 3 farm carbon calculators, which takes into account biological processes in the soil. I also designed and built a zero emission micro yacht, sailed around Britain in 2007 to promote low carbon lifestyles. And I started an insulation company, which has insulated over 1,000 properties now, period, and listed properties, saved 20,000 tons of CO2. And I now work with councils on a programme to raise awareness of the biggest things you can do to reduce your carbon footprint. And 1/5 of our carbon footprints as UK citizens, typically 1/5 comes from our food. So a really important part of the future is carbon farming. So how farms emit CO2, and I should say at the beginning CO2, when I say CO2, it's actually taken to mean CO2 equivalent, which is a basket of greenhouse gases. So how farms emit greenhouse gases in general. Nitrate fertilizers emit nitrous oxide, which is 300 times more powerful than CO2 as a greenhouse gas. Deep ploughing causes total disruption of the microbes in the soil and also exposes the air to the carbon in the soil, which is the organic matter, and cause it to emit into the atmosphere. Anaerobic decomposition, like slurry pits, creates much more greenhouse gases, 50 times more greenhouse gases per ton than aerobic decomposition, which is the old farmyard manure mixed with straw, which had air in it. Overuse of soils, where the soil is not being put to furlough from time to time, means that the carbon content of the soil is being depleted every year, which is why the UN says there's only 50 harvests left in the world's agricultural soils. And turning forests to fields, of course, is terrible, and feeding your livestock with grain. So what is carbon farming, on the other hand, is usually organic, although organic isn't enough, it needs to be more than organic, but usually organic as well. No dig and horticulture, aerobic composting, furlough the soils from time to time, once every 4 years or whatever, maintain forests and hedges, and grass-fed meat. So how does soil sequester CO2? This is the soil composition, typically 45% mineral, gravel, sand, silt, clay, rock particles, basically, 25% air, 25% water, and 5% organic matter. And organic matter is the living part of the soil. It is also known as humus. It's like compost, and it's 50% carbon. So the sequestration process, and sequestration means to absorb CO2 and bury it somewhere, store it away so it doesn't go back into the atmosphere. That's sequestration. The sequestration process also includes trees and growing seaweed and other things. But in soils, CO2 is absorbed by the plants through their leaves, through photosynthesis. The plants store the carbon in their bodies, and they also emit carbon through their roots. Microbes and fungi turn the carbon into humus, and humus is a stable compound which stays in the soil, and humus also represents soil fertility. So some facts about sequestration. Rich forest soils are 10 to 15% organic matter. However, intensively farmed arable land that has been farmed intensively for many decades can be as low as 1% organic matter because it's being depleted every year. A 0.1% rise in organic matter represents around 9 tons of CO2 being sequestered per hectare per year. So if farmers can increase their organic matter content, they're absorbing massive amounts of CO2 from the atmosphere. Across the world's 5 billion hectares of agricultural land, this would sequester 0.1% rise of organic matter per year would sequester 1/3 of total current human generated greenhouse gas emissions, and that comes from the IPCC. However, Ed Hamer of Chag Food in Devon has achieved a 0.85% rise in organic matter each year for the last 6 years. Globally, if that was done by all agricultural land, that would sequester 3 times the total current emissions of humanity. So I'm putting this on the table to really show you that once we've reached net zero by 2050, we will still have catastrophic climate change. We need to draw down the roughly 1 trillion tons of excess CO2 that's already in the atmosphere, and farming is one of the biggest tools that we have to draw down those CO2 emissions. Carbon farming could provide significant income for farmers whilst growing more nutritious and tasty food. The income from the farmers at the moment through farming subsidies has been around £250 per hectare per year. Increasing organic matter by 0.1% represents 9 tons of CO2 sequestered per hectare per year. And on the current EU emissions trading markets, that would represent £60 per hectare per year of income for farmers. But if they match the levels increased by Chag Food, they could get as much as £500 per hectare per year for selling the carbon offsets. Nutrition and taste. Nutrition and taste. Organic matter holds nutrition, vitamins and minerals, and carbon, which is the basis for sugar. The more organic matter, the more nutrition. Therefore, soils that absorb CO2 contain more nutrition in the soil, and this nutrition is absorbed by the plants, and this creates more nutritious food, and the more nutritious the food is, the more flavour it has, as Matthew was showing us by his tests of taste and Brixometer readings. Therefore, carbon farming is also good for health and enjoyment. How to support carbon farming? Buy organic, because although organic isn't the whole story, because large-scale intensive organic farms are just, organic tells you what it doesn't have in it, it doesn't tell you what it does have in it, just says no pesticides and herbicides in a nutshell. So organic is usually a good indicator, but probably small-scale, local, small-scale farms, they have to invest in the natural capital of their soils, and so they have to maintain and increase the organic matter content, so they're more likely to be producing high nutrition food. And local and seasonal food as well. So know your producers, go to farmers markets, veg boxes, and if you can't afford other forms of organic food, organic milk. But really what we're looking for is another kind of food we could do with another label, which I would describe as rich soil farming. And we hope that through the work of Grffn, in time to come, there'll be a different additional certification along with the organic that this is also high nutrient or rich soil farming. And you'll know that that is both good for the environment and good for human health. And here's an example of shopping in a farmer's market. And it also promotes human relationship and community. And so it's good in all ways. So thank you very much. And Carbon Savvy is sponsored by Mitchell & Dickinson. Thank you for your attention there.
But I'm going to open it up for questions to Elizabeth, Matthew, Mukti, or myself. I'm just having a quick look in the chat. We've got a number of bits to go through. So Stacia, is that right? Stacia, do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Sure. I'm Stacia, and I'm in East Africa. I'm in Malawi. But I connect completely with everything that you're talking about. I teach about sustainable nutrition. I am a registered dietitian, and I teach about the way that soil eats is the same way that we eat. So when I'm talking about the food groups for humans, I'm talking about food groups for the soil, and always looking in systems and cycles. And I can share some links with you how we teach it if people are interested in some of that on sustainable nutrition. So Elizabeth came to work with me 8 years ago, Elizabeth? 7 years ago, and she came as a nutritionist, but then became very interested in permaculture because that's what we do. We've been here 25 years. And Elizabeth started talking about this brick stuff, and so I'm getting into bricks now, and I'm so happy about some of the stuff you shared, and she sent a link this morning. So I just had posted a question about understanding bricks a little bit more and the timing on when you use the refractometer, I think you call it, and how shelf time affects, because of course with nutrition, nutrients will decrease over time.
Yeah,
what the storage, packaging, processing, how many things we can test, that kind of thing. If you could say a little more, thanks.
Yeah, I'll hand that over to Matthew if you want to have a little bit of a go at answering that. Oh, you're on mute, Matthew. Matthew, you're on mute.
Sorry, I got distracted in that last bit as I had to respond to a question. Just sorry, Stacey. Just summarize what the last bit of your question was.
It's mainly about using the refractometer and what you can use it on. So you showed us fresh food. Can I use it on any processed food? If I test those carrots today, in a couple of days, what about testing those carrots again?
Okay. Yeah.
That sort of thing. Thanks.
Yeah. So we would recommend testing food as fresh as possible. There are issues with food that's stored over a long time. If the food dehydrates, you alter the ratio of water to dissolved solids, and that's what the refractometer is measuring. So, so we're trying to knock out these variables to create a more level playing field so we can compare one apple against another by getting it as close to harvest as possible. So processed foods won't work. It's fresh food and as close to harvest as possible.
Thank you for your question, Stacia. So would anyone else like to unmute and ask a question? We've got one. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce your name, sir, but Blaise Pascal. I did actually attempt it. There we go. If you'd like to ask a question, please unmute and fire away.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Your presentations were really impressive. I learned a lot from what you have shared with us. And my specific question is on the Bricks tool that you are using in your project. And because I'm doing a project on genomic selection and with goals of improving zinc and other essential micronutrients in ingredients.
Yeah.
So the phenotyping tools that we are currently using are quite complex and not that handy. So I wanted to ask if there is a way that we can collaborate and see how that tool can be used. Because my research, I came to do my research in China because in Africa, we don't have such kind of infrastructures, and it would be better if we can have access on that tool and then conduct research in Africa in subsistence farmers, and yeah, I think that would be very helpful in my research. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I suggest we connect later, and I'll share email. But we are developing a citizen science project. We do want people to use the BRICS refractometer to help build the evidence. We would love to have you on board to be part of our citizen science project, so we can have a conversation around that after. And I will put my email in the chat so that you can email me later. Please do.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, Adam.
Yeah, I'm aware that the time has absolutely rocketed by over the last 60 minutes. And so we are due to finish. I mean, really, I think, you know, there's been such richness in the 4 presentations that we could have gone on for a lot longer. So I'd now like to invite Matthew to bring the webinar to a close.
Thank you. I will just share screen. So I've just put my email into the chat. Please do contact me.
The sixth thing.
So I don't think I can go into presentation mode for the speed. I'll leave it like that. So what we just want to end with is Grfn's advocacy message. We want to begin changing the narrative. We want to move from food quantity to food quality. We've got to talk about food quality. We want to move from food security, which is how do we feed, you know, X number of billion people, to nutrition security. There's no point feeding people with empty food, making them more sick, making the planet more sick. So we need to talk nutrition security. And we really think it's time to bring back food as medicine. We are seeing potential to grow foods that express the concept of total health. If we eat food that is totally healthy, then there is great potential to improve health generally. So these are some of the messagings we'd like to put across. So the next thing to do is to say help build the evidence. So I've just shared my email, and we have developed a number of BRICS kits that you can purchase, so you can begin testing food for yourself. And we ask, please share the results with Grffn. We are also hopefully developing a UK lab setup to take part in helping develop this bionutrient meter. So that will happen next year if we get our funding in place. We will be inviting growers in the UK to be sending us samples. That will go through a laboratory process where all these nutrients and soil indicators are measured. And then that's used to create a database that will eventually calibrate the bionutrient meter. Once we reach that point, that bionutrient meter could end up as an app on a phone. That app means that everybody that owns a mobile phone has the potential to begin scanning food quality. So food quality would become determined by food citizens. And then lastly, to support our work, you could visit our website, make a one-off donation or a regular donation. And that's it. Thank you very much.